Oh, Rose, dear, you finished Lady Victoria's wedding pearls beautifully, Mrs. Whitmore said loudly as guests toured the manor. Such fine work for a servant girl. Lady Victoria laughed, fingering the pearls I'd sewn by candlelight. Yes, Rose has such clever hands, perfect for someone of her station. The visiting ladies nodded approvingly. I stood there in my servant's dress, invisible while they admired my work as if I were a talented pet. Rose, fetch tea for our guests, Victoria commanded sharply. And mind you don't drop anything. I curtsied silently, burning with shame. Tomorrow she would marry Lord James, wearing pearls I'd sewn, bought with money that should have been mine. I grew up believing love had to be earned through service. When I was 7, Mrs. Whitmore found me crying in the servants' hall. Your mother died bringing you into this world, she said, not unkindly. Lord Ashford kept you out of Christian charity. You must work twice as hard to deserve your place. So I did. I scrubbed floors until my knees bled. I mended clothes by candlelight. I never complained, never asked for more, never dreamed I deserved better. Good girls are grateful, Mrs. Whitmore would say when I brought her perfect needlework. Good girls don't ask questions. Victoria was 2 years older and everything I wasn't. Golden-haired, confident, loved without earning it. When she was cruel, Mrs. Whitmore explained it away. Lady Victoria doesn't mean harm. She's learning to manage servants. You must be patient. I learned that love came through usefulness. If I was helpful enough, grateful enough, invisible enough, maybe they'd keep me. Maybe someday, someone would see my worth. The library became my refuge. Hidden among dusty books, I could read poetry and dream of lives where people mattered for more than their service. That's where I met Lord James. Tennyson, he asked one evening, finding me with a book. I'm sorry, my lord, I shouldn't... Please don't apologize, I love poetry too. He was kind without wanting anything in return. When he smiled at me, I felt valuable. When he asked my thoughts on Shakespeare, I forgot I was just a servant. For months we met secretly in the library. He never made me feel small or stupid. He listened when I spoke, remembered what I said, treated my opinions as worthy. I fell desperately in love with the first person who saw me as human. But he was promised to Victoria. Everyone knew it. Their engagement would unite 2 great estates. Still, when he looked at me, I let myself dream. Maybe love could be different. Maybe I could be chosen for myself, not my usefulness. I was so very wrong. At first, our friendship felt like a beautiful secret. James would find excuses to visit the library when I was cleaning. We'd discuss books, share dreams, laugh together. You have the most interesting mind, he'd say warmly. Victoria only talks about gowns and gossip. I treasured every word, every glance, every moment he chose my company over hers. Then the engagement was announced. I must do my duty, James told me sadly the night before the announcement. But these conversations mean everything to me. I nodded, heartbroken but understanding. Noble marriages were about land and money, not love. But something shifted after the engagement. James still came to the library, but now he seemed restless, conflicted. I wish things were different, he'd say, standing too close. I wish I could choose freely. He began touching my hand when we talked, stroking my hair when no one watched, telling me I was beautiful, special, the only person who truly understood him. Victoria is pretty but empty, he whispered. You have depth, intelligence. You're everything she's not. I should have pulled away, I should have remembered my place, but I was starving for love, and he fed me just enough to keep me hoping. The night he kissed me, I thought maybe dreams could come true. I can't stop thinking about you, he breathed against my lips. You're in my heart, Rose. Whatever happens with Victoria, you're in my heart. For 3 beautiful weeks I believed I was chosen. He'd meet me after midnight, hold me close, promise that somehow we'd find a way to be together. After the wedding, things will change, he'd say mysteriously. Trust me. I thought he meant he'd find a way to make me his mistress, maybe even marry me if Victoria proved unsuitable. I was foolish enough to believe love conquered all. Then Victoria cornered me in the sewing room. James told me about your little meetings, she said sweetly. How entertaining for him, playing with the servant girl. Don't worry. After we're married, he'll probably keep visiting you. Men need variety. My world cracked open. I wasn't his beloved, I was his amusement. After that conversation, everything changed. Victoria's cruelty sharpened into something calculated and deliberate. "Rose, Lord James mentioned you read poetry," she said at breakfast, loud enough for guests to hear. "How clever of you to learn above your station. James finds it amusing." The visiting ladies tittered. James said nothing, cutting his bacon with intense focus. "Perhaps you could recite something for us?" Victoria continued mockingly. "I'm sure James would enjoy your performance." I stood frozen, humiliated, while Victoria smiled sweetly and James stared at his plate. That afternoon, she summoned me to her room. "I need new chemises before the wedding, the finest silk with hand-sewn lace. You'll work nights to finish them in time." It was punishment disguised as duty. I sewed until my fingers bled, pricking myself constantly in my exhaustion. When James passed me in the hallway, he couldn't meet my eyes. Once he started to speak, but Victoria appeared and took his arm possessively. "Come, darling, Rose has work to do." The worst humiliation came a week before the wedding. Victoria announced she needed a new riding habit. "The emerald wool, Rose. And I want every seam perfect. If it's not exactly right, you'll start over." I spent 3 days creating a masterpiece. The habit fit perfectly, showed her figure beautifully, made her look like a queen. When I brought it to her room, she examined every inch with a magnifying glass. "This seam is crooked," she declared coldly, pointing to a line straighter than her own morals. "My lady, I've checked every— Are you arguing with me?" Her voice was dangerously sweet. "Perhaps you think your work is above criticism?" She handed me scissors. "Cut it apart, start again." I stared at her in shock. 3 days of perfect work, destroyed for sport. "Now, Rose." As I cut apart my beautiful creation, Victoria watched with satisfaction. "James was right about you being amusing. So eager to please, so grateful for scraps of attention." The final blow came the night before the wedding. James found me crying in the library over the ruins of the riding habit. "Rose, He stopped, seeing my tears. "What happened?" For a moment his old kindness returned. He touched my face gently, and I thought maybe he did care. "Victoria destroyed my work," I whispered. 3 days of sewing, ruined for nothing." "I'm sorry," he said softly. "After tomorrow things will be easier." "How?" He pulled me close, kissing me with desperate hunger. "Victoria won't care what I do once we're married. We can continue meeting. You'll be my special secret." The words hit me like ice water. Not love, not rescue. I would remain his servant, just in a different way. "You want me as your mistress?" "You understand me, Rose. Victoria never will. This doesn't have to end." Standing there in my torn dress, hands bleeding from needlework, heart shattered by his casual cruelty, I finally understood. I had never been anything but entertainment. That night, cleaning Victoria's room after her final dress fitting, I found something that changed everything. Hidden behind her jewelry box was a leather folder tied with ribbon. Inside were papers that made my heart stop. A marriage certificate. Lord Charles Ashford wed to Elizabeth Bennet 19 years ago. A birth certificate for Rose Elizabeth Ashford, born 8 months later. And a will in Lord Charles's handwriting, leaving everything to my beloved daughter Rose. Elizabeth Bennet, my surname. The dates matched my birth perfectly. I wasn't a servant's orphan child. I was Lord Charles's legitimate daughter. My hands shook as I read my mother's letters. Lord Charles had married her in secret because she wasn't noble-born. When she died in childbirth, he'd planned to reveal the marriage and claim me as his heir. But he died in a riding accident before he could act. Letters in Victoria's own handwriting revealed the truth I'd never suspected. She'd known for years who I really was. So had Uncle Edmund. So had Mrs. Whitmore. "The Rose problem remains manageable," Victoria had written to Edmund. "She suspects nothing and serves willingly. After my marriage, we should consider permanent solutions." Permanent solutions. My blood turned cold. More letters revealed their complete plan. Edmund had found my father's papers after his death and realized I threatened his comfortable position managing the estate. So he'd hidden the truth, paid Mrs. Whitmore to raise me as a servant, and let everyone believe Victoria was the only heir. The cruelest revelation was Mrs. Whitmore's payment records. For 18 years, she'd been paid handsomely to keep me ignorant and grateful. "The child must never question her station," Edmund had written. "Kindness mixed with firmness will keep her useful and grateful. She serves willingly when she believes it's charity." But the most devastating discovery was James's involvement. Letters between him and Victoria revealed their plan went beyond marriage. They'd been corresponding for months, planning not just their wedding, but my future. "Rose grows too attached," James had written. "Her infatuation is useful now, but could become problematic. After our marriage, we must ensure her continued discretion." Victoria's reply was vicious. "Let her think you care until the wedding. Afterward, she'll be so grateful for any attention she'll accept being your mistress without complaint. Servants are easily managed with false kindness. Every touch, every kiss, every word of love had been calculated manipulation. They'd been laughing at me behind my back while I dreamed of love." The final letters discussed my disposal after Victoria was safely married. Not murder, that was too risky, but perhaps an accident or commitment to an asylum for mental instability. "She's grown too bold," Edmund wrote. "After the wedding, when the estate is legally secured, we'll arrange her permanent removal." I sat on Victoria's bed, surrounded by evidence of the most elaborate betrayal imaginable. Every person I'd trusted had been lying. Every kindness had been calculated. Every moment of love had been theater. They'd stolen my inheritance, forced me to serve in my own home, and planned to kill me to keep their secret. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd kept records of everything. I gathered every paper, every letter, every document proving their conspiracy. Then I sat down at Victoria's writing desk and began planning my revenge. By dawn, I knew exactly what I would do. The wedding was set for 3 o'clock. At exactly 2:30, as guests took their seats, I would present my evidence. Not to Edmund or Mrs. Whitmore or James, they were all conspirators. To Lord Thornfield, James's father and the local magistrate. To Dr. Morrison, who'd delivered me and recorded my birth. To Father Benedict, who'd married my parents. To the assembled nobility who could witness the truth and ensure justice. I spent the morning copying documents, preparing evidence packets, and gathering the original papers that proved everything. As Victoria dressed for her wedding, chattering excitedly about her future, I served her with perfect calm. She never suspected the servant girl laying out her stockings was the rightful lady of Ashford Manor. "Rose, you've been so helpful," she said sweetly. "After today, your life will be much easier. James and I have plans for you." "I'm sure you do, my lady," I replied with perfect composure. When she left for the chapel, I changed from my servant's dress into my mother's wedding gown, hidden in the attic for 19 years. It fit perfectly. Then I walked to the chapel, carrying a leather satchel filled with evidence that would destroy them all. Through the windows, I could see the ceremony beginning. Victoria looked radiant in white silk. James stood handsome and dignified at the altar. Edmund beamed with pride as he prepared to give away his niece. Mrs. Whitmore sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes as if she truly cared about Victoria's happiness. All of them, acting their parts in the greatest lie ever told. But their performance was about to end. I waited until the priest reached the crucial moment. If anyone knows of any lawful impediment why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. The chapel fell silent. This was my moment. I pushed open the doors and walked down the aisle in my mother's wedding dress, carrying the evidence of their crimes. Every head turned. Gasps echoed through the sacred space. Victoria's face went white as bone. "I object," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the chapel. "This marriage cannot proceed because it's built on theft, fraud, and 18 years of lies." Edmund tried to stand, but I continued before he could speak. "My name is not Rose Bennet, the servant. I am Rose Elizabeth Ashford, daughter of Lord Charles Ashford and his lawful wife Elizabeth. I am the rightful heir to everything that woman has stolen." I held up the marriage certificate so everyone could see it. Lord Charles married my mother in secret 19 years ago. I was born his legitimate daughter and legal heir. These people have hidden the truth, stolen my inheritance, and forced me to serve as a slave in my own home." Victoria found her voice first. "She's lying!" she screamed shrilly. "She's a servant girl having delusions." "Then explain this," I said triumphantly, pulling out her own letters. "Your correspondence with Lord Edmund discussing the Rose problem and how to dispose of me permanently after your marriage." I handed documents to Lord Thornfield, whose face grew darker with every page. "These letters detail plans for my murder or commitment to an asylum to prevent me from claiming my inheritance. They also reveal James's participation in manipulating my emotions to ensure my silence." The chapel erupted in shocked murmurs. James stared at me in horror, finally understanding that his victim had teeth. But I wasn't finished, not even close. The chapel exploded into chaos. "She's insane!" Victoria shrieked loudly. "Arrest her for disrupting a wedding!" But Lord Thornfield was studying the documents with the careful attention of a magistrate. Dr. Morrison had risen from his seat, his face pale with recognition. "My God," the old doctor whispered. "I delivered this child. I recorded her birth as Charles Ashford's legitimate daughter." Father Benedict stepped forward. "I married Charles and Elizabeth Ashford in this very chapel. The records are in our register." Edmund tried to flee, but wedding guests blocked his path. His face had gone grey with terror. "This is preposterous," he blustered desperately. "A servant girl's fantasy." "Then explain these bank records," I said, producing more papers. "Payments to Mrs. Whitmore for managing the Rose situation. Correspondence with asylum directors about my future commitment. Plans for my convenient accident after the wedding." Mrs. Whitmore had collapsed in her pew, her face buried in her hands. Victoria turned on James desperately. "Tell them she's lying! Tell them you don't know her!" But James couldn't speak. He stared at me in my mother's wedding dress, finally seeing not the servant girl he'd manipulated, but the lady he'd betrayed. "You used me," I said directly to him. "You made me believe you loved me while planning to make me your mistress. You let me serve your real bride while stealing my inheritance to pay for your wedding." Lord Thornfield's voice cut through the chaos. "Constables, arrest Lord Edmund and Lady Victoria for fraud and conspiracy. This wedding is void." Justice had finally come to Ashford Manor. As constables moved to arrest the conspirators, I faced each of my betrayers one final time. "You destroyed my life," Victoria snarled as they bound her hands. "I was born to be lady of this manor." "You were born to nothing," I replied calmly, "just as I was raised to believe. The difference is, I was telling the truth about my worth. You were lying about yours." Edmund tried one last desperate lie. "She's confused, your lordship. The servant girl has always been unstable." "Edmund," I interrupted, my voice deadly quiet. "I have every letter you wrote planning my murder, every payment you made to keep me silent, every document proving you knew exactly who I was while you watched me scrub floors that belonged to me." He deflated like a punctured balloon, finally understanding his complete defeat. But James was the one I saved for last. He stood at the altar in his wedding clothes, looking lost and terrified. "Rose, please," he whispered desperately. "You have to understand, I never meant—" "You never meant to be caught," I finished. "You meant every cruel thing you did, every lie you told, every kiss you used to manipulate me. I did care about you." "No!" My voice was steel. "You cared about keeping me quiet. You cared about your comfortable arrangement where you could marry my inheritance and keep me as your secret plaything." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "You want to know the difference between us, James? When I thought I was a servant, I still knew love should lift people up, not tear them down. You were born a lord and chose to be a predator." "What will you do now?" he asked desperately. I smiled, feeling power flow through me like warm honey. "Now, I'm going home to my house to claim my inheritance and rebuild my life without a single person who betrayed me." I turned to address the entire chapel. "For 18 years you watched me serve in silence. You saw me treated as less than human and said nothing." My voice grew stronger, more commanding. "Today you learn that birth means nothing, character means everything, and anyone who would steal from an orphan, manipulate a servant, or plan murder for money has revealed exactly what they're worth." I gathered my evidence papers with calm efficiency. Lord Thornfield, I trust you'll ensure these criminals face proper justice. Dr. Morrison, thank you for confirming my birth. Father Benedict, thank you for preserving my parents' marriage record. As I walked toward the chapel doors, Victoria screamed after me, "You can't just take everything. I've lived here my whole life." I paused and looked back at her. So have I. The difference is it was always mine. Then I walked out of that chapel, not the broken servant girl who'd entered, but Lady Rose Ashford, reclaiming her birthright with quiet dignity. Behind me I heard James calling my name, begging me to wait, to listen, to forgive. I didn't look back. Outside my carriage waited, no longer a servant riding in the back, but the lady of the manor returning to her rightful home. For the first time in 18 years, I was exactly where I belonged. That evening, I sat in my father's study, my study now. Surrounded by portraits of ancestors, I was finally free to claim. The house felt different when you owned it, instead of serving in it. Mrs. Pemberton, an elderly family friend, had come to offer support after hearing about the day's revelations. "Your father would be so proud," she said, tears in her eyes. "Charles loved your mother desperately. He talked constantly about the daughter who would inherit his strength and her kindness. Why didn't anyone question my treatment all these years?" She looked ashamed. "We assumed Edmund knew best about family matters. You seemed content, never complained. We thought perhaps Charles had left instructions for your upbringing." "I was taught that compliance was virtue," I said softly. "That gratitude was the highest form of goodness. I never complained, because I believed I deserved nothing better." The next weeks brought a steady stream of revelations and repairs. Mr. Hartwell, the family lawyer, helped me understand the full scope of Edmund's theft. "He's been embezzling for years," Mr. Hartwell explained, spreading ledgers across the desk. "False expenses, diverted rents, money moved to private accounts. Your inheritance is still substantial, but much has been stolen. Can we recover it? Most of it. Edmund's assets will be seized to repay the estate. Victoria's dowry, which was actually your money, will be returned. We'll pursue criminal charges to ensure they can't profit from their crimes." I began planning changes to the estate. The servants' quarters would be enlarged and improved. The workers' children would have a school. Fair wages would be paid to everyone, from the stable boys to the housekeeper I'd hire to replace Mrs. Whitmore. 2 months after the wedding that never was, I received my first letter from James. The letter read, "Dearest Rose, I know I have no right to write to you, but I cannot bear your silence. Yes, I was weak. Yes, I was selfish. But my feelings for you were real, even if my actions were wrong. I convinced myself I was protecting you by not fighting the arrangement. I told myself that loving you secretly was better than losing you entirely. I was a coward who chose the easy path. Victoria was everything I was raised to want, beautiful, well-connected, socially appropriate. But you were everything I actually needed. Intelligent, kind, genuine. You saw through my pretenses and loved me anyway. Please forgive me. Please give me a chance to prove I can be the man you deserved from the beginning. Your devoted James." I read the letter twice, then fed it to the fireplace flames. The man I'd loved had never existed. He was a fantasy I'd created to explain James's kindness. The real James was someone who could manipulate a servant girl's emotions while planning to marry her inheritance. 3 months later, a second letter arrived. "Rose, I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize now how badly I misunderstood the situation. You were never just a servant to me. You were the woman I truly loved. Victoria was duty. You were choice. I'm prepared to offer you marriage now. I know it's irregular given the circumstances, but your inheritance makes you quite suitable. We could be happy together as we should have been from the beginning. I await your favorable reply, James." This letter made me laugh out loud. Even in apology, he couldn't resist condescension. My inheritance made me quite suitable, as if I'd needed his money to have worth. I wrote back immediately, "Lord Thornfield, thank you for your kind offer of marriage. I must decline. You see, I've learned that love shouldn't require earning, begging, or proving. It shouldn't have to hide in shadows or settle for scraps. Real love sees worth without wealth, offers respect without conditions. You offered me marriage when you thought I was a servant with nothing. You offer me marriage now that you know I'm a lady with an inheritance. In both cases, you see me as a convenient arrangement rather than a person. I deserve someone who would choose Rose the seamstress or Lady Rose with equal enthusiasm, someone who values my mind, my heart, and my character above my circumstances. That someone is not you, Lady Rose Ashford. But the most important healing came from an unexpected source. 6 months after reclaiming my inheritance, I was walking through the village when I saw a young girl, perhaps 12 years old, scrubbing the steps of the coaching inn. Her clothes were patched, her hands were red from harsh soap, and she worked with the desperate efficiency of someone who knew punishment followed imperfection. She reminded me of myself at that age. "What's your name?" I asked gently. She looked up, startled. "Emma, my lady, I'm sorry if I'm in your way." You're not in my way at all. Are you happy here, Emma?" Her eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked back. "I'm grateful for the work, my lady. The innkeeper took me in when my parents died." "Grateful," I repeated softly. "Emma, would you like to learn to read?" Her face lit up like sunrise. "Oh, yes, my lady, but I couldn't. The innkeeper needs—" "The innkeeper will be well compensated for releasing you from service. You'll come live at the manor and attend the school I'm starting for girls like us." "Girls like us?" "Girls who deserve more than gratitude," I said firmly. "Girls who deserve education, opportunity, and the knowledge that their worth isn't measured by their usefulness to others." That night, watching Emma eat her first meal at my table instead of scrubbing someone else's floors, I finally understood my true purpose. I hadn't reclaimed my inheritance just to live comfortably. I'd reclaimed it to ensure no other girl would grow up believing she was born to serve, grateful for scraps, worth only what she could provide others. The seamstress had become the lady, but more importantly, the lady had become a protector of those who needed protection most.